Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. When it comes to spooky month, you probably think of evil clowns and flesh-warped abominations. So basically any of the endgame villains from any given lore storyline. But today, we aren't focusing on the terrors around us, but the ones underneath us. Today, we are covering the Subterrors. Debuting in the August 2016 core set, The Dark Illusion, this was one half of the third cycle of TCG Exclusive Archetypes. Burning Abyss at a very high standard, while UA got to enjoy a bit more rogue playability. Then Cosmos showed up doing their best meta impression, while Kaijus became a truly competitive staple from time to time. And this time around, Spirals would occupy the role of gimmicky secondary deck, at least until the power of Link Summoning did its job, leaving Subterrors to fill the role of top table powerhouse. I distinctly remember watching Nationals coverage, keeping an eye out for the first look at Subterrors, and I gotta say, I was super hyped. While the big bunguses were flip monsters, Shaddolls had proven that with the right support, you could make that the cherry on top, while the core of the deck was a decadent combo cake, and with a Destiny draw and a Dark core stapled onto such huge bodies, it was hard to see how things could go wrong. Unfortunately, things did in fact go wrong. Turns out these massive underground titans weren't hiding the next innovation of Shaddol Fusion, but were rather a testing ground for what would become crawlers. Slow, methodical, and in need of a massive shot in the arm before it gained meta relevancy. However, because it avoided going down the path of least resistance, we actually have a true, honest-to-goodness flip control strategy that cares about flipping its cards to advance its game plan. And while you'd be hard-pressed to see anyone playing anything beyond Guru and Fiendus nowadays, there's still a lot of potential wrapped up in our behemoth brethren. So let's dig up all the cards in the theme, see what ferocious plays lie just beneath the surface, then see if there's any outside support that can help ground our plays. It's time to siege our opponent's defenses with Subterrors. But before we continue, a quick reminder to please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed my content so far. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and there's no better way to get there than on our dual runners. Our next stop is 40k, which means Leo and Luna Explained, where we'll be covering Ancient Fairy Dragon's companions, the Power Tool Dragons, Morphtronics, and any other cards that are more than meets the eye. Also, check out my Discord where we're really getting into the spirit of the season. I also have a Twitch where you can join me for viewer duels, progression polls pulls, and chaos draft pulls for the foreseeable future. And don't forget about my Patreon, where you can gain access to my videos early, reach some of these milestones, as well as helping to determine which videos I make. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, back to the video. So what's the deal with Subterrors? Well, they're a series of Earth attribute monsters that all have different types, and can be sorted into two categories. Our level 4 and lower monsters, the Subterror Nemesis, who offer a variety of support effects to the theme, and our level 5 and higher Subterror Behemoths, who are all flip monsters, and since a lot of the Nemesis effects revolve around our Behemoths, we're actually going to start with our big monsters first before covering the small ones. And that's good because all of our behemoths actually have two other things in common. When a face-up monster you control is flipped face down, if you control no face-up monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. And once per turn, you can flip this card to face down defense position. That's right, we may not have any camels, but this is classic Pac-Man gameplay, except our swarms of locusts and scarabs have been replaced by dragon graveyards and volcanic lizards. Because of this, you could end up spamming a bunch of them out of your hand all at once, since you special summon the behemoths face up. You can then flip it face down, and as long as your field has an empty slot and you still have no face-up monsters, you can bring out another behemoth from your hand, repeating the process until you either can't or don't want to summon any more. Let's start with Subterror Behemoth Stygikraken, a level 5 Sea Serpent monster with 1400 attack and 2600 defense, and when flipped, you can target set cards on the field equal to the number of Subterror monsters you control and destroy them. Thankfully, it doesn't say destroy that target, so even if the set card gets flipped in response, you still get to blast it. However, that problem-solving card text bureaucracy has been moved to the targeting condition, where the number you target has to be equal to the number of Subterror behemoths you control. No more, no less. But because you can flip them face down, you do have a way to manipulate that number. But if they all get flipped up uncontrollably, you may have to forego that effect, especially if it would mean that you'd have to target your own set cards. but it is optional, so you can just choose not to use it. Stygian Kraken acts as your mass removal, leveraging effects that flip your opponent's monsters face down into actual removal, giving you a great payoff when you release your behemoths. Liam Neeson would be proud. Subterror Behemoth Dragossuary is a level 6 zombie monster with 2400 attack and 1600 defense, and when flipped, you can activate this effect. That turn, Subterror cards you control can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So not only do you get blanket effect protection for your Subterror monsters, both Behemoth and Nemesis, but it also helps your spells and traps, or at least the ones name stamped as Subterror cards. We'll get to that in a bit. Unfortunately, it doesn't provide protection to your set monsters, so as long as they're face down, Dragossuary isn't going to be doing anything, which is probably why it doesn't exactly crop up in even pure builds. I know its whole thing is that it's a skeleton, but I really feel like they should have fleshed this one out. Subterror Behemoth Umostrix is a level 7 reptile monster with 2000 attack and 2700 defense, and when this card is flipped, you can target a monster your opponent controls and banish it. Yeah, just quick and easy removal. It's susceptible to targeting protections and can be dodged if your opponent has that kind of effect on hand, but failing that, you've got a powerful piece of repeatable removal with a pretty sturdy defense stat, making it difficult for your opponent to run over it without committing something big to the board. It's also got a bunch of cute little whiskers, firmly cementing Umostrix as the second most pettable of all the behemoths. Subterror Behemoth Phosphoro Glacier is a level 8 aqua monster with 2600 attack and 2500 defense, and when flipped, you can send a card from your deck to the grave. That's right, we have another flip monster that's just a foolish burial. You can see why I feel like Subterror is the testing ground for crawlers. But actually, Phosphoro Glacier is better because while Dendrite sends monsters, Glacier sends cards, so you get the added flexibility of Foolish Burial goods, which does come up for some of our cards, but means we can incorporate synergies from a ton of decks with graveyard effects. So while flip decks in general are going to be pretty slow, this card does a lot to make sure it doesn't move at a glacial pace. Subterror Behemoth Voltelluric is a level 9 thunder monster with 1900 attack and 3000 defense, and when flipped, you can target a set monster your opponent controls and take control of it until your next end phase. So the same stuff you're using to help maximize Stygian Kraken's effect? Well, you can also use it to change of heart a monster. You can flip it, use its effects, send it away as material before you have to give it back, the works. And on top of that, it has the coveted level 9 status. While VFD is no longer an option, thank God, you can still access removal by way of Enter Blathnir, negation through Hyperiton, or removal using Earth Slicer. And any level 1 tuner, read Effect Veiler, means Barone access, because if there's one thing the control deck needs, it's more negation. Just don't be surprised during the mirror match when your opponent tries to do the same to you, because they won't be afraid of stealing your thunder. Subterror Behemoth Stalagmo is a level 10 rock monster with 2800 attack and 2100 defense, and when flipped, you can discard a Subterror monster, and if you do, draw 2 cards. Hey, we found the archetypal Draw 2 spell, except in terms of pure card advantage, it's even better, because you're not trading out 2 cards, the spell and the cost, for 2 draws, you're discarding a single Subterror monster in hand for 2 draws, netting you a +1, making it the same output as Pot of Greed. And while it's active, Stalagmo threatens your opponent with a very respectable 2800 attack stat to help add a little offensive pressure to that sweet card advantage you just got. But if your hand doesn't have any Subterrors, then Stalagmo is going to Stalagnate. Subterror Behemoth Speleogeist is a level 11 fiend monster with 3000 attack and 1400 defense, and when flipped, you can target a monster on the field and change it to face-up attack position if it's in defense position, also change its attack to 0. This is a savagely powerful effect, no matter how you slice it. You can use it on your opponent's monsters to 0 them out permanently, and force them to attack position if they aren't already, and can also be turned on your own monsters to force a flip if you aren't able to flip them yourself. And while it may suck to make it so that they have no attack power, using their own effect to flip themselves face down will nullify that debuff next turn, making this one of the cleanest pieces of card design I've ever seen in the game. It's an effect that can debuff your opponent or help you out, and uses the debuff property to limit what you can do with that support. Which means this is basically the only Geist card I'll ever like. Subterror Behemoth Ultramathus is a level 12 Pyro monster with 3000 attack and 1800 defense, and if this card is flipped, you can change all other face-up monsters on the field to face-down defense position. Hey, a big monster that's got a Book of Eclipse effect built right in. This makes it much easier to pull off Stygikraken and Voltalurix effects, because unless you're going up against a bunch of Link monsters, your opponent's about to find out why you're the one that subjugates the Subterranean. Be careful though, as this does hit your own monsters, so you'll want to make sure to keep that in mind for when you activate this effect. You wouldn't want to turn everyone upright for an attack, only for Ultramathus to show up and cool everyone off. Which is pretty ironic considering they're a walking volcano. But that's not all. Before we move on to the small fry, we've actually got a Link monster to talk about, Subterror Behemoth Fiendus, a Link 2 worm monster with 2000 attack, requiring 2 flip monsters as material. It gains attack equal to the combined level of Subterror monsters used for this card's Link summon times 100, so even a monster like Stygikraken gets this to 2500. And during your main phase, you can send a flip monster from your deck to the grave, and if you do, special summon a monster from your hand in face down defense position to your zone this card points to. And once per turn, if a monster this card points to is flipped face up, you can add a flip monster from your deck or grave to your hand. This is a divisive pick for support if ever I've seen it. All of its effects are very, very good, right down to the fact that it's sending a flip monster from deck to grave is part of the effect, so the Shaddoll synergies are quite evident. And because of the repeatable flip nature of Subterrors, you can trigger this effect every turn, making sure you have a healthy supply of flip cards to fuel your strategy. The issue is that many of the cards in our theme are not flip monsters, so you're not able to get support specifically for a pure version of the deck. It also doesn't help that, as a Link monster, it can never be flipped face down, which means the only way you can special summon the behemoths from your hand is by this card's effect. And honestly, flip monsters just don't make very good material. Even if they had effects that triggered when being used as material, it conflicts with the fact that they want to be set on the field to activate their flip effects first. And there's only one Link monster in the entire game that lets you use a face down monster as material, and as it turns out, Ghost Tricks aren't flip monsters. I'm confident that one day, Behemoth Fiendus will make itself known as a format warping threat for all the wild things it can do, it just needs a better infrastructure. However, despite all that, it does get number 1 in my most pettable Behemoth category, because that pink mane has gotta be so soft. Alright, that's all the behemoths out of the way, now it's time for the nemesis. Not the flag and corridor and arch nemesis, the nemesis monsters of the Subterror theme. Not that all of them are called Nemesis, but they're all kind of in the same boat. First off, we have what appears to be the younger form of the last behemoth we talked about, Subterror Fiendus, a level 1 spellcaster monster with 800 attack and 500 defense, and when your opponent activates a card or effect as a quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the grave, then target a Subterror monster you control, and on resolution, you negate the activation, then change the targeted monster to face down defense position. So hey, an Omni-Negate hand trap. It doesn't destroy, but I'll take it. And while on the field, you can target a face-up monster you control, change it to face-down defense position, and if you do, special summon a Subterror monster from your hand or grave in either face-up or face-down defense position. This makes Fiendus a really great way to recover behemoths that are lost in the grave while jumpstarting a big summon chain. For instance, you can have Fiendus target itself, flipping itself face down, then getting a behemoth back from the grave face up. Then you take that behemoth and flip it back face down with its own effect, and if those are the only monsters you have, you can start bringing out behemoths from your hand. So you can start to see why this is one of the few Subterrors that sees play in the much maligned Guru control deck, giving you another control option while also getting back your resources. So really, this card has a bigger impact on the archetype than its literal behemoth form. I guess big effects really do come in small packages. Subterror Nemesis Defender is a level 2 Beast Warrior monster with 100 attack and 2000 defense, and during either player's turn when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets exactly one set monster you control and no other cards, or when a set monster is targeted for an attack by your opponent's monster, you can send this card from your hand or face up from your field to the grave, then target another monster you control that would be an appropriate target, and that card, effect, or attack now targets the new target. And while you control a set monster, this card can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. So you get a pretty neat tank with decent defense stats that becomes undestroyable once you pair them with a set monster that can also Cairn Gorgon an effect if you need to. However, that's nowhere near as good of a hand trap effect as Fiendus, and while being indestructible some of the time is cool, being dependent on having a set monster meant that your opponent could just run into your big monsters or blow them up to make Defender vulnerable. Which feels like something of a flavor fail, right? Like, shouldn't it be protecting the other cards? Why is it depending on the other cards to protect it? Subterror Nemesis Archer is a level 3 fairy monster with 1600 attack and 1400 defense, and at the start of the damage step, if this card battles a face-down defense position monster and you control another Subterror, you can shuffle that opponent's monster into the deck. And if this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the grave, you can special summon a Subterror monster from your deck in either face-up or face-down defense position. I'm conflicted on how much I like this card. Having a floating effect that can get you into your big behemoths is nice, and shuffling cards into the deck is a great way to ensure your opponent won't see it for the rest of the game. But I don't know, we already have enough great removal for set cards, and because the float doesn't give you the option to summon the monster in attack position, it doesn't give you the option to be proactive with it. You can't crash Archer into a bigger monster to summon one of your 3000 behemoths to take control of the board. You'll have to settle for your higher defense ones and hope you can get their effects off later. I'm starting to think that making the Nemesis's effective cards wasn't really the priority, and taking a back seat to make sure they looked like the coolest D&D party ever conceived. And to their credit, they succeeded. Subterror Nemesis Warrior is a level 4 warrior monster with 1800 attack and 1200 defense, and during either player's turn you can send a Subterror monster from your deck to the grave as cost. Then, on resolution, you tribute this card and at least one other monster so the total original levels tributed equal or exceed the level of that Subterror monster in the grave, and if you do, special summon that monster in face-up or face-down defense position. And if a Subterror Behemoth monster is flipped face-up while this card is in the grave, you can special summon this card. Alright, now this is pretty sweet. It's effectively Megalith full, letting you do a ritual summon of your Subterrors right out of the deck, though sadly you can't tribute monsters from your hand to help out with this. But once you've got your monsters set up on the field, Warrior can help you bounce around between whatever behemoth fits a certain situation, while Fiendus can revive any that you tribute off to get them back into play. And because it's revived whenever a behemoth is flipped up once per turn, you can keep doing this turn after turn. I once again have to question why a theme of monsters called the Subterror Nemesis works so well with the behemoths, but at least they have a cool sword, and that's what really matters. Subterror Guru is our last monster, and they're a little different. They're a level 4 dragon flip monster, like a behemoth, and when flipped, you can add a Subterror card from your deck to your hand. Very useful for keeping your hand stocked up with what you need. And while it's not able to flip itself back face down like a behemoth, it can target another monster on the field and change that monster and Guru to face down defense position. And this is a quick effect if you control another Subterror card. So if you meet the requirements, you've got a Book of Moon on a stick that resets your search effect. And that's why this is a headlining card in one of the most infamous control decks to date. Guru Control. The steady stream of cards Guru provides, combined with the ability to shut off certain summoning mechanics and attacks, along with Fiendus' negates and a select few Subterror cards we'll get into later, forms the backbone of a deceptively strong control strategy, supplemented by some of the game's most powerful trap cards that can actually end up finishing a round fairly quickly. Which is why, out of all the control decks here, Guru is my most preferred matchup, because once things go wrong, at least they usually end pretty quickly. That's right, I'm taking another shot at Altergeists here, folks. I hope they never get picked on the patron poll. I never want to talk about them. I hope they're stuck there forever. Who thought Sulquidius was a good idea? Alright, that's all the monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps, and one of our most important ones is the Hidden City, a field spell card that, when activated, lets you add a Subterror monster from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, you can change a face-down defense position Subterror monster you control to face-up attack or defense position, and once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can change a face-down defense position Subterror monster you control to face-up attack or defense position, then you can negate the attack. Boy howdy, does this card do everything. It gets you an on-theme monster that you need, it lets you flip up a face-down monster the turn it hits the field so you don't have to wait a turn, and it negates an attack each turn while still flipping a monster. This is the engine that fuels the entire deck and keeps you up to pace with quicker strategies. And you know it's an archetype steeped in lore because it's got a field spell that once again isn't named as part of the archetype. When are they gonna stop doing that? Calamity Upon the Hidden City is a continuous spell card that actually just got announced for Darkwing Blast. While on the field, your opponent can't target face-down defense position monsters you control with card effects, and monsters you control that were flipped up while this card was face-up on the field gain 1,500 attack and defense! 1,500! That is wild! That turns any of our nemesis into combat juggernauts, so imagine what it'll do to our behemoths. And if this card in its owner's spell and trap zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can target a monster in your grave and special summon it in face-down defense position. Okay, so you'll notice that this entire card doesn't say Subterror anywhere, and that's true, but come on, it's a Subterror card. The blanket protection effect is amazing, the attack boost is divine, and the floating effect lines up with our game plan perfectly. It really is a groundbreaking advancement in the strategy. Subterror Cave Clash is a continuous spell card that gives all Subterror monsters you control a 500 attack and defense boost for each set monster on the field. And once per turn, when a Subterror monster you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target a Subterror card in your grave, except a copy of itself, and add it to your hand. Now, the more Subterrors you set up, the bigger this boost is gonna get, being able to grant you 1,000 with just 2 set monsters. It does suck that the more offensive we want to be, the more monsters you'll have to remove from being set, but thankfully it counts both players' set monsters, so if you've Ultra Maphist a big lineup, you still get a substantial boost. And being able to recycle cards is nice because that means you can get back Fienduses so you can keep your opponent on the back foot for longer. And it's a Subterror card that will stay face up on the field, so Guru can be a quick effect. But because we have to be aggressive to get the recycling, this card doesn't see a lot of play because it clashes with our passive control style. Subterror Final Battle is a normal trap card that activates one of 4 effects. You can change a set Subterror monster on the field to face-up attack or defense position, change a face-up Subterror monster on the field to face-down defense position, the attack and defense of a Subterror monster on the field becomes equal to its combined original attack and defense until the end of the turn, or for this turn, activated effects of Subterror cards can't be negated. But no matter what you pick, this card is set back face down instead of being sent to the grave. That's right, we're operating on Scrap Iron Scarecrow rules today, and thank goodness because this is a card that ends up solving a ton of the deck's issues. Not only does this give you the ability to flip your Subterrors up and down as needed, its effect to add the attack and defense together and make that their stats for the turn is what gives the deck its teeth. Now, even the unassuming Guru can become a 3,400 attack and defense monster, capable of running over the largest threats and sustaining the heaviest blows from both man and beast alike. And the negation installation is a nice thing to tack on there that you can throw out whenever a hand trap shows up. So Final Battle is right because if you resolve this enough times, it's over for your opponent. Subterror Succession is another modal normal trap card that resets itself after activation, and you can pick one of 2 effects. You can send a monster from your hand or face-up field to the grave, and if you do, add a flip monster from your deck to your hand with the same attribute but a different name as the monster sent to the grave, or send a flip monster from your hand or face-up field to the grave, and if you do, add a monster from your deck to your hand with the same attribute but a lower original level as that monster before it was sent to the grave. This one isn't quite as exciting, but it is nice to have some hand fixing in decks that use the giant behemoths a lot more, being able to pitch a Voltoluric you can't use for a warrior, guru, or fiendus. And if that's all taken care of, you can search out whatever behemoth you need to toolbox a given situation. Though, as player reports have borne out, things start going a little sideways when Guru steps down, so this isn't exactly a successful succession. Subterror Behemoth Burrowing is a normal trap card that banishes a Subterror monster from your grave's cost, and for the rest of the turn, face-down monsters you control can't be destroyed by card effects, and your opponent can't target them with card effects. And if this card on the field is destroyed by a card effect, you can add a Subterror monster from your deck to your hand. And you can banish this card from your grave, then target a Subterror monster you control and change it to face down defense position. This card is like a Swiss Army knife of effects, doing a wild amount of work, but it's not quantity, it's quality, and what you get is mid at best. The protection is fine, so long as your monsters don't get flipped face up, and punishing your opponent for destroying this by giving you a search is okay, but that's all it is. though notably you can pop this with Stygikraken if you want to be proactive with it. And having an emergency turn this card face down button in the grave is super useful. It just turns out that a lot of cards released since just do what this card does better. Calamity helps with protection, Guru searches you cards, and Final Battle flips your cards down and up. It sucks that this card never really took off, but that's what you get for burying your head in the sand. Alright, so that's all these Subterror cards, but what do we do with them? Well, control is the name of the game, though when it comes to hard negation, we're gonna need to look towards the Solemn Brigade to get that handled. And whatever cards do stick, we pelt them with stun effects from our Subterrors before we move in for the kill. However, if we want to pivot away from a Guru-centric playstyle and focus more on our big beasties, we'll need effects that can deploy them quickly and easily. Then make sure we have plenty of cards to flip our monsters at will so we can harry our opponent with banishing, destruction, and stealing. So what can we play to help them out? Well, as far as flip synergies go, I can't recommend Prediction Princesses enough. The behemoths make for great tribute fodder for both Terra Ray and Terra Wraith, and are another vector for flipping your cards up and down as needed, on top of summoning them onto the field to boot. Bibliomuse makes for great tribute fodder for warrior effects, and Koinorma can summon any of your behemoths to set them up for later turns. And with all this power to summon flip monsters as you please, you're in a great place to utilize the newly unbanned Cyberjar. Not that you'll have very many level 4 monsters to summon, and you're liable to lose all your monsters, so maybe don't use Cyberjar? As an archetype made up entirely of earth monsters, I must once again point you in the direction of Vernisylphs, because having free revival for your big mooks while giving you access to Vera, one of the wildest boss monsters I've seen in a while, is a blessing and should not be overlooked. The fact that they're face down half the time does mean they won't count as earths towards the negation effect, but everything else is still completely valid. No matter what version of the deck we're playing, there can be only one and goes in match lineup particularly well with our deck. We lack multiple types while also being a mono-attribute deck, something that's very rare in the current Yu-Gi-Oh sphere. If you can land these early, they'll take care of half of what your opponent is going to be doing all on their own. It might also be good to talk about how strong Nibiru is in our deck. An oft overlooked aspect of its effect is that it tributes as many face-up monsters on the field as possible, so we're in a unique position to make this a hand trap, meant to send both players back to the starting block, into an outrageously one-sided board wipe. Another card that cares about things being face up or face down is Lightning Storm. True, it checks for cards being face up, not monsters, so you'll want to find a way to clear out the Hidden City or Cave Clash just in case, but if those are out of the way, we can flip our own monsters face down and have a way to break boards even while we have one developed. The Pot of cards also mesh very well with our style. We don't really make much use of the extra deck aside from Super Poly targets, another really good card for Guru control, so Extrav and Prosby both make for fine additions, even if they do shut off Stalagmo. And in said Guru control lists, Pot of Duality stacks very well on top of them because Duality doesn't draw, it adds an excavated card to your hand from your deck, something entirely different. Some more good flip support includes Sol and Luna, a combined Book of Moon and Book of Taiyu as long as you and your opponent both have a monster, great for flipping their stuff face down while flipping ours face up. Ret Time Reviver Emit Tur is a monster you can summon from your grave that flips a monster you control and a monster your opponent controls face down, and is a level 2 tuner to help make cool synchros. And Fairy Tale Sleeper can change normal spell and trap effects into flipping your monsters down, while having its own flip effect to summon monsters from your hand. As for a silly tech pick, give Reverse Jar a shot. It flips everything face down just like we like it, and returns all face-up spell and trap cards on the field to their owner's hands. Each player can then reset that same number of cards that they return to their hand, but either way, you get more activations of the Hidden City, and get those pesky face-up back row out of the way so you can activate Lightning Storm! And that's all I have to say about Subterrors. As most TCG exclusive archetypes do, this holds a special place in my heart for trying to chart a path to greatness all its own. And while its potential is currently buried under thousands of feet of sheetrock, I have no doubt that, with the advent of some busted generic flip support, this deck will stop living under a rock, quit being such a sub-terror, and take its rightful place as a terror top. Wait, what the heck is a speedroid? But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Subterrors the G-rank giants we all know them to be, or are they just going to buckle under pressure? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to show your support, ring that bell so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with someone you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Harry, the ominous benefactor, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Adam Zajdel, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Cameron Berg, Eric, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Howling Zangetsu, Ironic, John Manji, Julius Sneezer, Larakia, Meteornus, Michael Madsen, Mighty Action X, Muzuki Clark, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Rem T Bright, RJ the Jank Monarch, Ruxith Sarani, Sophie, apparently, The Fresh Prince of Conair, The Wizard Moose, True Neutral, Xander Wolfensberger and Zyrus, Cosmic Crusaders, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Chaz Ghost, Emily, Eva Padilla, Inblink, Jesus Garcia, KL, Kale the Dragon, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-de-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Nitromo, Shooting Star 3300, Star-Lord 777 and the Legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. I'm only able to continue doing this thanks to the support of these lovely people, so if you'd like to be a part of these credits, as well as help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, please check out my YouTube membership or Patreon links in the description to see if I have anything you'd like on offer. And if you'd like to see another archetype that's flippin' awesome, check out this video I made covering Prediction Princesses. And if you want to see two Yu-Gi-Tubers going at it, check out Noah Jenk and I's latest series, Progression Polls, where your voice shapes the format. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.